a name we've talked about a lot this offseason already is Hunter Greene, who Scott has at SP24. You have at SP31. I have at SP34. An electric arm, but he has an injury history, and he still pitches in Cincinnati. So I think there are concerns here with Hunter Greene. What do you think?
Yeah, the biggest thing with Hunter Greene is if you look at like FIP, XFIP, those kind of this is not a derogatory statement, but the dumber pitching indicators, just that they're very straightforward. Strikeout rate, walk rate, home runs is all they care about. He doesn't really look like a particularly different guy, especially by XFIP, I believe, which adjusts home run rate to average either way. And then you look at xERA, and it totally backs it up. He had a 3.03 xERA, and that's because Hunter Greene went from legitimately bad quality of contact allowed in both 2022 and 2023 to the second lowest expected WOBA on contact of anyone in baseball. He gave up less damage on the contact he allowed than anyone but Justin Steele, who maybe has some regression of his own coming, but had established a multi-year track record of being at least better than average at quality of contact suppression. Hunter Greene was the opposite. He had been just bad for 2 full seasons and then had a really, really great season. The problem is that is a stat that pitchers have control over, but it takes a long time to know how much of that is skill and how much of that is variance. And I have made the case many times before, but I'll point to what Dylan Cease went through. In 2021, he had a 383 xWOBA on contact. 2022, 313. Best in baseball that year, I believe. 2023, 383. And you remember Dylan Cease, pretty bad in 2023 because what happened in 2022, quality of contact improved. Strikeout rate actually went down a little bit. Walk rate actually went up. Kind of the same thing with Hunter Greene. His walk rate stayed flat, but his strikeout rate was down 3 percentage points. Mm-hmm. And so it all comes down to how much you believe that Hunter Greene went from being one of the worst pitchers in baseball at giving up hard contact to one of the best. And that's especially important because he does not play in a forgiving home park at all. He plays in maybe the least forgiving home park for giving up hard contact, especially in the air. So I think you can make an argument that Hunter Greene's command got better. The command metrics that we have don't really back that up, but I think the command metrics that we have and the people who've created them will admit they're in their infancy. There's a lot of work to go. I think you can make a case maybe that the just mere existence of a splitter, that he did not throw before 2024 and that he threw 8% of the time last year, the mere existence of that made hitters struggle to get the barrel of the bat on the ball. Maybe. I think you can certainly make that case. I don't find it a particularly compelling case. I think he is in many ways a very similar guy to the one he was prior to 2024. And that was a guy that I think I did rank around 30 to 36 in SP last year. Not a guy I want to draft as an ace, certainly, especially when missed time with an elbow injury last year.
No, yeah, I mean, ace, you won't have to draft him as an ace. Now, I do think it's worth pointing out because you're using Dylan Cease as a cautionary tale for what Hunter Greene could be. We all do have Dylan Cease as a top 10 pitcher now. Mm-hmm. So things ultimately went well for Dylan Cease, clearly. I am the highest on Greene of the three of us. As you mentioned, Frank, I have him 24th. I originally had him 16th. And so I've already moved him down quite a bit. And part of that is just, okay, I could have picked any starting pitcher 15 to 50 for this exercise, right? I keep hammering that home, that 15 to 50. There's so much more or less equivalent talent in that range at the start at starting pitcher that I almost don't care what order they're in. And so I could be talked into moving Hunter Greene lower. I don't necessarily want to stick my neck out for him. Mm-hmm. But part of the reason why I ranked him so high is I felt like he did turn a corner in season. His walk rate got much better over his final 12 starts, and his ERA was 1.72 during that time. Prior to it, it was 3.61, which is probably closer to what you're expecting from him, Chris. So it seemed like, okay, he started throwing more, he started avoiding walks. Maybe that means he was commanding the ball better in general. Doesn't necessarily mean he'll be able to sustain it, but Hunter Greene, to my recollection, already had so much helium in fantasy that for him to surge to the end of the season like he did, surely everybody's going to be enthusiastic about drafting him again. It doesn't seem like that's the case. So that might be reason enough for me to move him down in that range of starting pitchers where I'm not particularly tied to anyone being anywhere.
Yeah. For me, it's not even a talent thing, Scott. I mean, you pointed out like his numbers, the command improving, and the ERA down the stretch of the season. I think he is truly talented and an elite. It could be an elite arm. It's more so just kind of the circumstances. He throws 98 miles per hour. He had an elbow injury last year. He has a history of shoulder trouble in the past as well. And then
Tommy John surgery.
There's just the pitching in Cincinnati part of it too. So he's a fly ball pitcher where I know he did a great job limiting hard contact last year, but just merely being a fly ball pitcher in Cincinnati, it's like, it just feels like things could go wrong more times than they go right. So it's just the circumstances. Like if he gets traded to, I don't know, the Padres, I feel like I would love to draft Hunter Greene, but I just don't love the whole Reds part of drafting Hunter Greene. So that's why I am actually the lowest of all three of us so far on him this offseason. Going to bring up Adolis Garcia here. He finished as a top 20 player 2 years in a row, 2022 and 2023. And then he took a tumble last season. Really, the entire Rangers lineup just took an entire step back. I don't know if it was a World Series hangover, whatever it might have been. But now we see him ranked and the ADP much lower. Scott, you have Adolis Garcia as your 40th ranked outfielder. Chris and I have him down at outfielder 36. And if you look, just the quality of contact took a little bit of a step back. Plate discipline, it's always not great, subpar, I would call it, for Adolis Garcia. And then towards the end of the season, he dealt with a strained patella tendon in his left knee. It turns out he could have been playing through that injury for quite some time. He also has had the same injury in his right knee. So now we're talking about an outfielder who's past 30 years old. He's had injuries to both of his knees. But, as recently as 2 years ago, he was a top 20 player. So it's kind of like that Luis Robert, where we know the upside is still really high for someone like Adolis Garcia, but, just getting a little bit older and having trouble with the knees and things like that. Makes Adolis Garcia a tough player to rank this offseason.
Yeah, I haven't found him particularly difficult to rank myself because I just kind of feel like it's over.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
All right.
No, I could be wrong. It could be that his knees weren't feeling right all last year. His worth noting, his exit, maybe you already did know this, his exit velocities were very strong last year. As last year was playing out, I kept feeling like Adolis Garcia was going to bounce back. But he didn't. He did a little in August and September, but not to Adolis Garcia of old, not to being a truly impactful bat in fantasy again. So he just kind of suffered through it all year. It's on the wrong side of 30, as you said. He didn't have much of a pedigree to begin with. It was surprising that he became the player he was, and he just kind of fizzled out. That's my feeling, but maybe this year he'll show up. Those knees will be feeling great, and he'll be good again.
Yeah, I think kind of a weird part of it, you mentioned the exit velocities. They were, it was down a little bit from that monster 2023 season, but not terrible. I mean, 91 average exit velocity, 12% barrel rate. That barrel rate is basically in line with what he did in 2022 when he hit 27 home runs. So I think if the Rangers lineup just bounced back, they all just kind of bounce back together like I think we're mostly expecting, then, he'll just improve with them. Or maybe he's just done and, it could be. But, yeah, it's like that range of outcomes for me is what makes it tough to rank Adolis Garcia, because I still see a path where he could bounce back and be an elite level player. I'm just not really betting on it right now, I guess I would say.